And now, in studio, bringing his Midwest values from the Show Me State to the land of San Diego. He's a triple threat, licensed as an attorney, mortgage broker, and a top producing realtor who's crushing the competition. Here to deliver you what's happening in the trenches of the market. Your host, Michael Gaddis.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis of michaelgaddis.com and frontierloangroup.com. I'm here continuing our conversation on tax-related issues to Ashley Cairns of Sullivan Hill and Allison Soares of RJS Law. So one of the things I know that we encounter a lot in the real estate world is, and this is where all the worlds collide at once. We have a couple in the middle of a divorce. They either need to sell property or transfer property to each other, and then there's tax implications involved. So this is where the lots of disciplines come together into one. And so I guess my question to you, in the cases of divorce and transfers of property, what are the tax implications of those?
Well, when you transfer property incident to a divorce, so as part of a divorce, there's actually not going to be a gain or loss recognized on that transfer of property, which is really nice. The same goes for property taxes. So normally a change of ownership, they're going to reassess the property, they're going to give you a new bill for property taxes. But if there's a divorce, again, they're not going to think that a change of ownership occurs, so there will not be a change in property taxes. There's one caveat to that. So again, going back to the international side of everything, if the spouse is not a citizen, then the non-recognition rule applies. So that means if you transfer property to your non-citizen spouse, they will treat that as though a sale occurs. So you could get a tax bill on it.
Wait a minute, so even if you're married, and let's say you're married, but you're married to a non-citizen, as soon as you can't transfer the property the same way you could if you were both citizens. In this instance, if one of the two spouses is either from Mexico or Canada or France or wherever, if they're just a resident alien or something and they're married and you transfer the property to them, they're not going to say that's sort of it's going to have tax implications on that?
Correct. So the planning opportunity here for family law attorneys is if they have this type of situation, they want to transfer property that has a high basis and low value. And basically what that means is that it would not result in a high tax bill if they transfer this type of property.
Wow, I mean that's, again, I said wow before, but I mean these are things that I was unaware of. I did not know that. I mean, it's interesting that you have the same situation, you have a married couple, but just because one of them is not a citizen, it has a huge tax implications on the divorce.
Correct.
So all of you out there thinking about divorce where your spouse is not a citizen, you need to listen to this right now because this is going to be crucial to you in the future. So the rule in general is that when you transfer from one spouse to another, there is no reassessment of property taxes, right?
Correct.
But when you transfer to a foreign person, that's treated differently. And so your advice is to family law attorneys, beware when you're transferring properties with this situation because you might be setting somebody up for a property tax reassessment or something like that.
Or for income tax.
Income tax, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting at all. So let's talk about, I know in your sheet that you gave me, you also have, liens on the home. How do liens affect divorce?
Well, there's two different words, liens and levies, and sometimes people get those words confused. So it's good to break them down. A levy is on your bank account. Generally, it's a one-time grab by a government agency, reaching in and trying to secure the funds that they believe they're entitled to. A lien is what's filed, did I say it right? A lien has been filed by the IRS or a government agency when you owe money. So after a divorce, one party may go back and try to buy a house. There may be a lien on somebody's credit report because of a prior tax liability. It's good to seek a tax professional to determine what they could possibly do to purchase a house and what they could do to potentially remove the lien.
So if you're getting a divorce, it's almost worth your while to have your spouses or pull credit on both people to see exactly what's going on the credit report before you really enter into any type of decree whatsoever.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're saying that certain things come on, there might be things going on that your spouse is doing that you have no idea.
Exactly.
And I've seen that happen in my own, in my practice. I do distressed housing, so I help people who are losing their house. And, a lot of times people who are losing their house are emotionally they're emotionally unstable, their relationships are unstable, there's a lot of instability there. And you'd be amazed, well, maybe you wouldn't, but you'd be amazed at how many times I get a couple in there and they're talking to me about how they got into the situation, and then one spouse will look at the other and go, what are you talking about? I didn't know that. Or I'll pull the credit report and I'll say, hey, I just need to go through your credit report because we're going to talk to the bank and they're going to pull your credit, so we're going to look at credit. And they're like, well, what is that? What is that? What's this lien from 5 years ago? It's amazing how much that happens. You think you know everything about what your spouse is doing because you're with them all the time, but that might not necessarily be the case. And from your experience, that tends to be the truth, right?
Exactly.
Wow. So let's move on now to as far as what's the best way to get those liens removed? How difficult is it to remove an IRS or franchise tax board lien off of a house?
There's the different words again, remove, release. And so with the IRS, the lien is never going to be removed until the liability is paid in full. But there are certain cases where you can go back and potentially present it to the IRS that a purchase money mortgage that's given in good faith for the purchase of a property can go back and have priority over the IRS federal tax lien. Now, this document may or may not work with larger banks. Smaller banks have a tendency to, the subordination may come in and may be able to adjust that. But it's something to consider when you want to buy a home or when you want to go back and sell a property.
So as an example, I had a woman who came to me, and her husband had accrued a tax liability during marriage. They got a divorce, a lien was filed under both of their social security numbers, and she went to try and get funding for a new home, a mortgage on a new home. When the mortgage company pulled her credit, they showed that there was a lien, and they wanted to know, well, how are we going to protect our interests? And so we were able to point them to a revenue ruling that showed them that if they give her a loan to purchase real property, such as this residence, then they would have priority over an already recorded federal tax lien. Like Allison said, some of the bigger institutions aren't going to rely on this revenue ruling that discusses purchase money mortgages, but some smaller credit unions may feel more comfortable.
Wow, that word purchase money keeps coming up a lot in my radio show. For all my listeners out there listening, you guys have heard me talk about purchase money a lot. So here it is again, that word purchase money. So, I think that this is really enlightening to me because, there's when I've dealt with the IRS and franchise tax board on short sales that I've done for people, and a lot of times people who are in trouble on their house, it ends up being trouble in a lot of different areas. So I'm frequently dealing with HOA liens and IRS liens and franchise tax board liens as far as trying to remove them for the purpose of a short sale. And I do know that, the IRS is more accommodating sometimes than the franchise tax board is in doing that. But it seems that, in instances of non-short sale, that there still might be ways to have those liens released, not removed, but released. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Well, it's in the government's best interest. The government has the right that you owe them the money. So they have in their best interest to not only have the lien on the property, but to go back and to fight for it. So you need to go back and to make the position and make the argument to them that it is in their best interest to go back and have the lien released in the facts, based on the specific facts of the case.
Now, do you guys just deal mainly with the IRS, or you deal with the franchise tax board as well?
All of them, franchise tax board and the IRS.
And which one of them makes your stomach hurt more?
Definitely franchise tax board.
Really,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
And why do you think that is?
Well, just like you said, I mentioned earlier, the IRS has certain national standards that they allow. They have certain formalities. There's managers that's involved at every level. Even when you're in an audit or any sort of issue, you always have another person to ask a question to follow up. You have certain appeal rights, and you have certain ways to protect yourself as a taxpayer. The franchise tax board does not have as many avenues for a taxpayer to fight for their rights.
Wow. Well, that's some good information today. Well, I want to thank Ashley Cairns of Sullivan Hill and Allison Soares from RJS Law for coming in today. I think you guys gave us a lot of information, probably more information than we ever thought we were going to know in such a short time period. And as I told you before the show got started, radio time moves faster than real time, because as you're listening out there and as we're sitting here, when we sit here and talk, 12, 13 minutes goes by like that. It seems like 5 minutes, and before you know it, the show's over, and that's a shame, because we'll have to have you guys on again sometime and talk about some other different topics related to tax law. Well, that does it for today. I want to thank you all for listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. discussing anything and everything related to real estate. Remember, for those of you out there that are considering a reverse mortgage or who have loved ones considering a reverse mortgage, I conduct reverse mortgage workshops monthly. For more information, please contact my office at 888-242-2272. That's 888-242-2272. Or email me at michael@frontierloangroup.com. You've been listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer.